I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo simply refuses to take days off. Mr. Andrew Kuo, how are you on this drizzly New York City afternoon?
Staring at my window, not feeling... Just kidding. I feel amazing, Ben. This is an incredible day. I'm especially excited for many reasons.
You almost had me.
Oh.
I thought you were with
Acting.
undefunded whist, staring out at the gray clouds. The sky stay gray like Heron, as Raekwon put it in 1995. And yet, you are still ebullient. Why are you so happy?
Today we have our special correspondent, our fourth cookie. Kat Marnell is joining us. Kat, how are you doing?
I am so happy to be here on Cookies Hoops. You know, I love you guys. I wear your fucking gear every day.
You
You
love to
changed
see
my
it.
life. I'm obsessed with basketball and also New York City updates. It's like, what more could you want?
What more can you want?
No one can intro Kat like she can intro Cookies Hoops. But Kat Marnell, writer extraordinaire, best-selling author,
It's true.
woman around town.
It's true.
NBA
Increasingly
Twitter
less
royalty.
so as I mature and grow into who I actually want to be and
Well, who do you want to be?
less of the demon. You guys,
Yeah,
do you...
that is a tough question. That is a tough opener, but you led me right there.
Let me tell you something about downtown New York right now.
Finally, let's go.
It's quite druggy.
Yes.
And I didn't leave. And for those of you listening who don't know my past, I used to like write about addiction and stuff. I left town for a long time. I did not come back here after 3 years of being abroad just to be on fucking ketamine, PCP, and cocaine again.
Oh,
But it happens.
Oh, man.
But I've gotten out of that. I mean, but like everyone is partying a lot.
there's a lot of ketamine in New York City right now.
Oh, yeah. And everyone is sharing the bills, which is so gross. Like, no one should be doing that ever. And
You
the
mean
dirty keys.
It's a ketamine co-op?
Yeah, the ketamine is everywhere. Lots of gay guys. Yeah, there's no straight men in any of these places I go. I don't never meet any guys. Because all the K scene is, quite gay.
It is everywhere, though.
It's everywhere.
I mean, this was already occurring to some degree, but I'm wondering if the popularity of ketamine is also tied to the fact there isn't really anywhere to go, or at least
Yeah, and it
it's
takes
not-
you out.
yeah, it's not like cocaine, which is okay. We're going out dancing necessarily.
It's horrible.
Yeah. What world are you talking about?
Coked up dancing. No, but ketamine, first of all, it's something that I really, I miss the wave. Back when I used to do drugs, it was lots and lots of PCP, which you smoke. I personally think that smoking a drug keeps things much fluffier and lighter than putting something in a nostril straight to your brain, which I just think is so bad. And anyway, I kind of dipped into that when I first moved back just because I was used to partying and I hate it. It's been way too much. So I've just been locked down. I've been quarantining from the drug scene.
Well, I do recall you putting up a tweet maybe yesterday, a day before. You're like, I'm not on ketamine.
Yeah.
You really let it be known that as of that tweet, you rest constantly. You don't do ketamine. You are
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler. You eat
And I'm
orange
eating-
slices in the dark.
Yo, the oranges right now, you guys. I know that Quo can talk produce. So, because
Yes.
fruit, something that has always stayed with me is when Quo talks, about how if there's one bad piece of fruit, it's disgusting
it
and it
could ruin
ruins
you.
everything forever.
Yeah.
It's so gross. And quarantine in New York, COVID New York produce was so bad. I was having a horrible time all summer, because I love fruit. So finally I was just getting sliced pineapples, the only thing that I could count on being consistently you have to pay for like a sliced melon, because everything else, I bring home apples, you cut them open and you're like, ew. Or, the berries with the mold, like I can't. But right now, the oranges are so good. I get them down at that fine fare by the Rite Aid on Grand Street. And I eat them all night and I hydrate. And I'm Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is inspiring. Wow. We're not going to basketball right now, but anyway.
We're gonna talk a lot
I
about
work out
Jimmy
a
Butler,
lot in my home.
the CEO of
I want to
Big Face
know
Coffee.
this. I want to know this Jailhouse, this Cat Marnell Jailhouse workout routine. Is it aerobic? Is it weight training? What do you do?
I mix it up. You have to mix it up constantly. And all summer, I have this amazing roof, so I would just take it over. And I worked out in a bikini all summer for tanning.
Nice.
With my face, obviously, you do heavy sunscreen on the face at all times. But I would just take over my roof. And I do full weights. I do the bands. And I was watching Jimmy's workouts actually on YouTube, and his trainer combines the bands with the weights. But the NBA players use so many bands. I love that. So but all people need are bands, and I do everything. But I was always into YouTube.
It was really impossible to get weights during peak lockdown. I think maybe that's changed, but it came out that there were, it was impossible.
Oh yeah, it was impossible.
And it turned out that there were bots that were just buying up all the weights, and then they were being resold for like 3-4 times as much.
You know what?
It was
sucks
crazy.
Is having a surplus of weights in your house.
I mean, but clearly they were effective in doing this, because you would see, like, I don't know, 2 40-pound barbells and it'd be selling for $500. Well, it was wild. Like, you literally could not buy. Yeah,
I saw that.
You
couldn't even get. You couldn't get like the 8 pounds. You couldn't get anything.
Nothing from like Dick's Sporting Goods. Like, you couldn't go to Target. They just did not have any weights for sale for months.
That is it's like the most disappointing cornering of the market. COVID, like there was toilet paper, lifting weights, and hand sanitizer. It's like the Portland Trailblazers.
Hand sanitizer.
Falling asleep.
So off hand sanny.
Yeah, that's just stupid. And I love how all the bathrooms in New York have conveniently stayed. Like, no one is loving this more than the people, bless them, who have to clean the public bathrooms in New York. You can't. I mean, it's still the thing where you can't go too far from your house because, like, in the summer it'd be so hot and you walk around, usually you carry like a big bottle of water with you everywhere. You men are lucky because you can just, use a tree or something. But
it's a Paul Pierce situation. I hear you.
I mean, so you either can walk around and there's no bathroom open at Bloomingdale's. There's nothing like the places in Soho that you can always just go in and, just pee or do whatever. Or, not to be too weird. You're a woman, like, you get your period. Like, women have to plan for things. And no, you can never go far from your house if you have to use the bathroom for any reason. Not that I like to talk about bathrooms. Sorry.
Why isn't there an app that has a live bathroom update of
Isn't
where you
this
can
just
pee,
George Costanza's
poop?
plan that you're trying to re-bring to fruition, to modernity?
In the early 90s, there was a zine, but it was Xeroxed and stapled and sold about all the best bathrooms in New York City, like downtown.
Is that what Seinfeld got it from?
Seinfeld, well, I think everyone has this idea at some point, right? Like, if you just live life in New York City, you're like, someone should do a thing about where I can go to the bathroom. And how come no one has done it? Because although it would be hard to update because it's minute by minute, but for example, the best bathrooms right now are the Strand Bookstore on 14th, in my opinion, and the Essex Market on
Delancey. I see. I didn't even know about Essex.
They have a public bathroom that's very crispy.
And it's open now?
Oh yeah, you can go.
It's
nice. It's on the ground. It's on the second floor. It's crispy and it's private. And I hear a lot of people Paul Piercing up in there.
Well, there was a distinct lack of public bathrooms in part because all of the ones in parks were closed, and that's where people were simultaneously hanging out. Like, Kat, what did you think about New York City nightlife, especially, over the summer, as someone who has been in that world for a long time? What did you think about it gravitating towards rooftops, parks, things like that?
Well, the rooftop is my natural habitat. As someone who ran with graffiti writers most of my life, I was raised by them as one who is raised by wolves. So I'm always happy when things go to the rooftops. I mean, there was lots of magic. It was really exciting. Because I was away for so many years, so I came back. I was like, this is all so wonderful. But other people seem kind of burned out. But I loved those people in the parks in the dark, and I mean, it was cool. I guess the novelty will wear off as winter comes. Now it's going to be like, who's got the apartments? I always think there's such weird energy that when you go to someone's apartment, I'm always like, I'm so sorry, like this and that, But I've been to a few. I'm going to go back to No, I'm not going back to partying. This is hard. I've been avoiding it so hard because I just can't.
I mean, you're Jimmy Butler now. You eat orange slices in the dark. At the same time, you are Cat Marnell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you come back to New York and stick around here because of COVID? I mean, you had traveled the globe for several years. And was that because of COVID that you came back here for a more prolonged stay than
yes,
typical?
But I mean, I've moved back here for good. But of course, like I'm like, oh, I want to fly somewhere, I want to go, and I've stayed here and not, all of my impulse control problems are now to like plane tickets. Like I'm like,
are you still in an Airbnb though?
Yes.
Oh, come on, you're such a fraud. You're totally out of here.
No, I'm not.
As soon as we can get back in France, you are.
I will be. I'm getting a lease. No, can't I? These fucking I don't understand why it should be so hard to get an expat community going and get everyone to just leave their lives. The way Hemingway did. But no one will come with me. This does
not sound like someone who's sticking around in New York at all.
No, it is.
You're in an Airbnb and you're now preaching for the creation of expat communities outside of New York.
Well, It's true. But no, I am. I'm staying here. It's good. Travel gets extremely, extremely empty. Like, I posted this picture of Carmelo yesterday on my Twitter, like looking out the window of a bus thoughtfully, but he looked kind of dead in the eyes. But like, that's all I did. And towards the end, it was just like me, like looking out windows and like anesthetizing myself with like scenery.
My friends who are like photographers and are in bands that traveled mostly through their 20s and early 30s are soulless. Like, they have this emptiness that they try to tell me about, being like, I don't belong anywhere. If I have no task to get to another place, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to start a long-term thought. And it is damage that, like, hopefully in that time you've made enough money so you can like rest. But if you haven't, let's say you're in like a fledgling punk band and you've traveled for 15 years and the band is over and now you have to work, it is traumatic. There needs to be therapy for this, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I think I was so comfortable coming back to quarantine, because after being on the road for just years, all I wanted to do anyway was just like sit on like a bed, and I feel like I'm like, it's like so luxurious to me, like, and then just see friends like when I want to. But traveling was awesome. I'm excited I'm going to travel again. I've got my list. When things reopen, I want to go to Senegal. I want to go to Haiti. Haiti you can go to right now, I think. But it's all these like COVID they're like, so for all of the new regulations that keep when countries reopen to United States travelers, it's all like, you need a test within 72 hours of your flight. And I'm like, how would that even work? Because people's results take so long. I don't know.
Well, one issue with that whole, there's that, and then there's also arriving someplace that you want to go and being, I guess, restricted to quarantining for 14 days in some of these places. So like, but what's the trip then? Exactly.
Right.
But that said, I've been keeping an eye on the places where we're allowed to go, and a few more are opening up. But in general, it's sort of like the old saying about not wanting to be a member of any club that would let you in. If you're a nation that's welcoming Americans with open arms, my immediate response is, okay, you have this completely out of control then. Like, this isn't working.
Stop
You haven't
sweating us, man.
You haven't
Like, I
stymied
need
COVID
space.
whatsoever. It is rampant there. And you're like, Americans? Yeah, fuck it. Come on, you little COVID rats. Come and hang.
Yeah, I noticed Brazil's nice and open for us.
Exactly. Brazil just
example.
opened.
Brazil's wild. Gee,
Yeah.
I've never been. I would love to go there, but of course they have a visa situation. You can't just go there impulsively.
Morocco just opened, except there are apparently restrictions even traveling between cities, which is a little bit of a bummer because Morocco would be an interesting addition to that list that includes such places as Serbia, Croatia, Albania, maybe
Macedonia, one of the
Estonia.
worst places I've ever been. Not to shame any country, but I will go ahead and shame it. Now, I guess it's called North Macedonia. I don't know. That was probably the craziest place I've ever been. That's the place where you take out money from the ATM and it can become something that your bank has to resolve. Because you're like, what the fuck? Like, I took out the equivalent of like $30 and it charged me for like $300. And then the currency that came out didn't match even what I had taken. It was like two different issues. And finally, like, Bank of America sent me a letter being like, we've like refunded. And then it's the only place I've ever been in my life where after I took a taxi from the bus, everything here is dirt cheap. It's fucking Macedonia. I was in Skopje and I had taken a bus from Serbia, from Belgrade, which is awesome. And I went to a basketball game there, and that's, you can see, and Jokic is everywhere. On the ads, like, he's the spokesperson for like Goldfish crackers there and billboards. It's really cool, but it's a great for basketball scene. It's awesome. Like, there was this little kid playing basketball like against the giant fortress, like, because they have hoops everywhere and they're actually using them, unlike everywhere else you go in the world where people are just playing soccer on the basketball courts.
Footy.
But so anyway, I got to Skopje, or however you say it, Skopje, which is this crazy city where basically instead of the government there wanted to bring in tourism, right? So instead of spending the money on what they need, which is like, I know I'm talking with such authority at what they need, but according to what I read, like schools and roads and everything, the government's like, no, we're going to buy like 100 huge gaudy statues and put them everywhere. And they're new. They're not like old statues to make it. And so and it's like half done because the construction never gets finished. So everywhere you go, it looks like you're in Vegas with these, and it's like giant, like breastfeeding, sexy women, like with their babies on their like big boobs. Like, this is just statue or like huge. It's just a crazy place.
There is no adult in the world room. You think you go to these far off places and see a vision of like a normal thought, but there is no real normal thing in the world. Am I wrong about this? Like, in all my travels, which is not as much as you guys, nothing is what I think it is. It's always like bad statues and weird neon, right?
I mean, I don't know. There's certain places where you figure that they kind of have it more together. You know, I mean, I think when you're talking about Macedonia, you're talking about these countries. You know, shout out to Pero Antic, Macedonian strongman, played for the Hawks for a few years, was maybe beaten by the NYPD. Oh. But, I mean, that's the same situation where Cephalogya had his leg broken outside of One Oak. So, there. New York City, nightlife, Macedonian connection. Obviously, I have to bring that up with Cat Marnell here. But all that said, you know, Macedonia is a poorer country that's coming out of the veil of the Iron Curtain. So, you know, they're striving for ethno-nationalism is going to be presented in likely really foreign ways to, say, America. But that also kind of sounds like us putting up Confederate statues or some shit.
Yeah, and Boris Johnson is not doing, like, these elegant, mature things, right? Like London, Paris. I mean, it's assuring to me knowing that there isn't this gold standard that history props up. And you get Times Square, you know, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to go to Times Square. And it's like an M&M shop.
Yeah, with a big Benny the Butcher LED advertisement right now over the police station. You guys see that on Instagram?
No, but I listened to his album this morning. Sounds
yeah,
good.
how was it? It dropped last night.
I'm I always swore I would never talk about hip hop, but I've banned myself. I just feel myself becoming more and more culture vulture. I can't help it.
Are
But if
you,
you
are you into the Griselda movement of
Yes.
upstate rappers? I definitely am. They're from
Of
Buffalo.
course.
It's close enough.
You know, Armani Caesar. Ugh.
Yo, a Black
Love
Thought
her.
record dropped in the middle of the night last night, and I found myself in a spiral of conscious hip hop Twitter.
And what did you like rekindle? Did you start going back and listening to Common, the bitch in you, to like get revenge against Cube?
I found myself listening to Dookie by Green Day, so it kind of
Oh,
took
that's a
like
good album.
there's no skips on that album. It's perfect, but it kind of like churned. But you know, people were already ranking Black Thought as like, is he top 3? Is he better than Eminem? I'm like, no, he's none of these things. He's Black Thought. I don't know. I was never a Roots guy, but we've talked about the Roots endlessly on this pod.
Griselda's awesome. And
Well, here's my thing about Griselda. I have a few Griselda thoughts, and Quo keeps preventing me from talking about Griselda because he doesn't listen to them. So
really?
I'm going to use you as an ally here.
He's been
Fend
trying to
off
do it for
Quo.
weeks, but let's hear this. Let's hear these.
So what I
takes.
do enjoy is that Griselda puts out an album every week, which allows me to have this same futile conversation with Quo, trying to talk about Griselda because they just put out so many records. So here's where it goes, though. When they first came out, it was so referential of 90s rap that I kind of wasn't into it. But they really owned their lane. And Westside, Conway, Benny, they just kept putting out more and more records until they owned that sound. They made modern versions of 90s rap, but after a way, it was no longer referential of the 90s. It was just what they were doing. And I've been really into them over the past like 6 months or so. I listen to all their records. I like a ton of them. But now that they're going back and getting like Slick Rick on songs and Jadakiss, it's starting to kind of bum me out a little bit because it's almost becoming the old school rap that they were referencing and making them less separate from it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really feel like that's going to be your hill to die on, Ben.
This is why I don't
No,
want to talk about
I still like the.
This is why I negged this for 3 weeks.
Get out of here! You just don't listen to any of the albums.
Yeah, because of those.
Watch the games, Quo.
Come on. Slick Rick is guesting on them. Like, yeah, I don't have to check that out.
But that's what I'm saying is like when they start putting Slick Rick on the songs, I'm like, no, now you're just making 90s rap in 2020. I liked it
sounds
when we
amazing.
were making 90s referential rap, but it was new.
But it's
Like, they're
literally not
destroying
90s.
I know, but they're destroying the illusion of it being new rap when you're like, no, it's a sample and a slow down drum beat with Slick Rick on it. I'm like, okay, now it's just 90s rap.
Well, would you rather
I needed plausible deniability, Kat.
This is like ageism. What do you just want, like Sway Lee on everything?
Kind of.
I just like them doing their own thing. I don't like them with any guests. I don't like. I looked at them. I think the guests on Benny's new album, they're good rappers and stuff. Black Thought, it's cool, but same thing with Black Thought. Don't ruin this little Griselda world. I want to think of them.
I mean, you have that song "Crowns for Kings." I like that one with Benny the Butcher and Black Thought. I love that song.
It's good, but I want them like in Buffalo world. I don't want other rappers on songs. I don't want new producers. I just want them driving around snowy Buffalo, talking
Hit
about
Boy?
having an AK on the corner.
I mean, aesthetically, that's what brought me in. Like, obviously, I'm always like the most shallow person that gets drawn in by the glamour. Armani Caesar.
Buffalo, yes.
Well, I mean, I love that Liz, the cover for the Liz with the third eye, and then I follow her. Like, you can just buy. She has separate clothes, not the Griselda stuff that sells out, but she just has like, you know, like the things, the 2-piece. And I'm trying not to buy anything. I'm like, stop vulturing, Cat. But
Except
like
cookies, hoops,
yeah, well, the
merchandise.
yeah, of course. Every day I wear something, you guys. And people like DM or people have stopped me and been like, "Where do I get that?" I'm always like, they love the New York stuff. But
Cookieshoops.com, and while you're there, sign up for the Patreon.
that's right. But yeah, Griselda's awesome, and I don't know if Rolling Loud's going to be canceled this year. I mean, I've never been to one, but they're playing in Portugal. There's a Rolling Loud still allegedly for 2021 in
gotta
Portugal
keep
in
that.
July, which is just like on the beach, so it just kind of would be kind of magical.
Did you guys listen to the Bieber Benny Blanco song last night that dropped?
No.
It was pretty good. It's very reflective, but I don't know. I thought we were
Bieber's
talking.
burned out. And I don't
Did
believe, I
he?
mean, all of these people are burned out.
I think so too. And this song is like apologetic and wistful and slow. But I don't know. It's called Lonely, and I thought Akon would be on it somehow. Talk about an old head. But this is a separate question. How the fuck did Akon get so powerful? Isn't he like trying to start his own government or something?
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't tell if it's ever genuine with him though.
Yeah.
Because I felt like he was exposed for running some like fake power generating or water scheme as well.
I've heard crazy rumors about him, but
What do you got?
I mean, not even anything I want to say because I'm sure it's not true. Some like sex stuff, like it's not really bad stuff. But that's like dark web. I don't even, you hear about like child sex trafficking and celebrities.
wow,
I'm like,
okay,
I don't.
okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, I'm sure it's not true.
All right, that sounds like Pizzagate for like early 2000s R&B.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
who
to say
knows?
there aren't some suspects.
I mean, I heard that there was like a child sex trafficking tunnel underneath the Getty Museum. I don't know where I heard that though. I mean,
I
I'm
gotta
sure.
say, the amount of tunnels that have been built for child sex trafficking is just remarkable. Like,
These
it's kind of like
engineers, man.
Montreal in winter, you know? Like, you go to the state capitol in Albany, sex trafficking tunnels everywhere.
I want to make
Like-
a tunnel. We got to get that sex trafficking engineer up in here. He's kind of busy this month, so no time next month.
I'm just wondering how it works from an infrastructure standpoint. When you've got the subways, you've got water pipes, you've got sex tunnels. Like, you'd assume, it's a real labyrinth down there.
You got the Ninja Turtle lair. Like, how do you avoid?
Yo, quote literally, that's exactly what was just in my head as we were talking about this. Is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. That specific movie, that tunnel, like, and I think that's what made my brain like enchanted with that whole idea, like, because when you're little, you just like wish that everything was like a tunnel or like, that you could like hit a door in your house and like it would flip and you'd find some like secret passage. And I still wish there were more of that. People should be like writing this stuff.
Yeah, if you just get a shovel and start digging, you're
Yeah,
either
well,
going to get a
those
sex
guys are-
tunnel, you're going to get pink slime from Ninja Turtles, you're going to get like the G Train. Like you're going to hit something sooner or later.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
This is graffiti related, right? I used to know some guy in art school, and for his final project, he was like, "Oh, I made this all about the underground," and everyone's like, "Oh, cool. You mean like subculture?" And he was like, "No, actually underground. I lift manhole covers and go as far underground as I can." It was kind of amazing. He was like, "There's people who live down there." This is before that movie Dark Days. Remember that DJ
And the book,
Shadow?
Mole People.
Yeah. This was a thing for a while, but I guess it outed the communities down there. So now maybe there's none. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we hadn't even brought in mole people into the underground cellar dwellers or the cellar dwellers
The
themselves.
cellar dwellers. Oh man, they were okay.
They're all right.
Yeah.
Well, like recently it came up. There was that story about the guys who work at Grand Central. They had cable and everything down there, but
Yeah.
there was like that little bunker. And I mean, why not?
I agree. Would you say, Kat Marnell, that the shutdown of City, did it become a golden era for graffiti? Or did that get shut down too? Because as someone who was driving around, it was a completely empty city. You didn't see anyone. People were blowing through red lights left and right. I mean, it was vacant. And
Yeah. Well, with anything, graffiti writers thrive. Blizzards, blackouts.
that's exactly where I was going with this.
When that blackout happened, or no, this was Hurricane Sandy. You could walk. I remember walking around because I was trying to find candles, and I was like walking, and I eventually because I had nothing, and I was like, my boyfriend at the time was AJ Delario, the former editor-in-chief of Deadspin and Gawker. And I found some messages on his phone from some other girl, like during the hurricane, and fucking like left his apartment in the middle of the night, like went back, like walked over the bridge, the whole crazy time. in my life. But I got to my apartment, I had and it was like freezing, I had no candle, so I like went out for a walk, and you could smell the paint. Like it was just that, and I kept thinking I'd see my friends, you know, but in the meantime, it was just all of Nolita and everything just smelled like spray paint.
In March, when this all went down, we went into hiding. I asked a couple of writers on my Twitter if it was the golden age of writing, and they're like, no, the cops are everywhere. But after BLM, after the cops decided to be like, you don't like us, we don't like you, then everyone just started going out because no one was stopping them. Was that true?
Yeah, I mean, where I am now, which is right around Kenmare and Bowery and everything, like it's new stuff like every day.
Yeah.
But
who should we be on the lookout for? What young graffiti writers are on the come up?
I don't know. I'm glad I do know, but I don't.
They know. We're not going to turn this into the narc pod, Quo. You know, I know you want to expose them.
No, we got to see who is doing the best work out there.
I mean, I don't know. NEMS, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
these days are over for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm trying, you know, why can't I, you know, and first of all, the spray paint fumes go to these guys' brains, okay? Talk about bimbos. I can't handle it anymore. I'm trying to have intellectual conversations. Between the fucking ketamine, the spray paint, everything in this city, people are brain dead, including me. You know, I used to be smart.
I have a friend who does spray paintings. He's done them for years. And he is kind of out there, and he's constantly reminding me that it's not the spray. He's always been kind of aloof, but I don't believe it. I'm like, oh, you just spent all month making these spray paintings in a spray booth in Detroit. And he's like, no, I've always been like this.
I think everyone is kind of brain dead right now. It just sort of goes without saying.
Yeah, and everyone talks about astrology too, more than ever.
Online, but like, yeah, everyone's sort of been wrapped up in whatever they're into in a way that becomes very circular. So, you know, we just talk about basketball all the time. It's like, okay, am I brain dead? Is my knowledge now just involved with talking about Jimmy Butler and Big Face Coffee? Is that all I have? Like, what happened?
I've also had the thing from traveling, like. And I've become that person, I will say, that like I've seen the whole world now, and so I've seen how other people are living, so I have such like little tolerance for people like complaining about their lives right now, which is not fair, but it just seems so comfortable here compared to the rest of the world. I mean, I was in Cairo right before I came home. In March, I was in Egypt, and that was some of the craziest stuff I've ever, like, I showed up late to the pyramids, like the Giza pyramids, right? And they closed at 4, and I got there at like 3:45, thinking they closed at 5. It was just crazy. Cairo was crazy. Like I thought it was gonna. I mean, it was a really intense place. I don't even think I would go back. It was much more. You know, it's not a walkable city hardly at all. It was very overwhelming for me, and that never happens. But anyway, so I did this horseback ride like around the pyramids, and it was kind of that like Florida Project thing where it's like, you know, Disney World, and then they show like what's around Disney World. This was like the shit that is around the Giza pyramids is some of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. Just like little kids, like I literally saw like a little girl like eating trash. Like, I mean, in there with like the dog. I don't know. It was crazy. So, and to have that, and then to come back, and it wasn't just Egypt. I mean, it was all over. And then to come back to the United States, and then I think that I just feel lucky to be like in an Airbnb and have a nice computer and be able to like watch, you know, the NBA on our friend Moses's login, which is the biggest gift I gotten from the universe this year.
Shout out to Moses.
Yeah, that changed my life.
Well, shout out to Moses as well, a great
Always.
guy. I want to congratulate you on your performance in the bubble, being that you are Jimmy Butler now. You eat oranges in the middle of the night. Ketamine is off limits. You just work out.
Yeah.
What did you sense about Jimmy Butler going into the bubble? You knew this was going to happen. You had full faith that Jimmy was going to carry the heat as a day one, like myself, like Andrew Quo.
But I did.
You knew. What was it about Jimmy?
I've known a lot of
was it?
things. I knew Kamala Harris was going to be a big star, be going as far as she had. I knew that years ago. And when she, with Jimmy, first of all, like, I think that maybe men aren't understanding, like, there's when the focus is on someone, like, you kind of realize how incredibly, like, beautiful they are. Like, Jimmy right now is a real beauty, what Andy Warhol would call, like, a beauty. Like, I wish Andy was around sometimes for these basketball players, because can't you like imagine, like, you know, you see, like, the old Polaroids and portraits of, like, Muhammad Ali that he did and stuff. Like, I feel like Giannis, can you imagine him as, like, a Warhol portrait? Like, you know how, like, the guy, like, athletes would come into his studio when they were, like, he did his athletes here. Like, I just see some people, like, are so good looking, like, and Jimmy has, like, his looks. I don't know, it's because he, like, grew his hair out, and then his hair stopped being, like, the wacky hair for this. He is so attractive. Like,
was that it that you looked at Jimmy Butler and said, "This"? You
couldn't look away, and everyone is saying that, including the men.
He's too magnetic. He's too attractive to fail.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of
his hotness shares.
Big,
like,
and
beautiful.
Jimmy's smart, as opposed, like, his viral stuff. Like, I mean, he's a performer, and so when the cameras were, you know, I felt like he was going to do better and better the more attention was paid on him, and like the starring role, you know, like, people rise to that. And he's obviously been someone who, what I think is different from, like, I mean, I obviously don't know anything for real, but sometimes I think when I look at people like Ben and Joel, I'm like, maybe they're quote unquote problem in some ways. If you want to talk about, not that I want to, but, like, they started as the star, like, and so all they could do was fuck it up. Like, and if someone want to hold it against Ben Simmons for not taking more risks or doing threes, whatever, but, like, they started as big celebrities, and so. But then also I heard that they can't even do all, like, the vlogs and videos and stuff because of their contracts and their whatever. Sure.
I would agree with you on the part about Jimmy Butler being unique. And he's not by himself. There are other guys like Jokic, you know, who was drafted in the second round. But Jimmy's route to stardom, I think, does offer him a different perspective. And I don't know that makes him a better player, but I think it makes his attitude cool. And he seems like someone who enjoys his celebrity because he's earned it in a different way than the other guys who have earned it. Or it kind of just came with the territory of being a top 3 draft pick and being an all-star. Because Jimmy was not someone who was recruited heavily. He played junior college, then he went to Marquette. Then he ended up being taken last in the first round. He didn't play as a rookie. And, you know, the fact that he built himself up into a guy who was probably the second biggest star after LeBron. You know, you could say Jamal Murray had a great run, but, you know, Butler was really that guy.
He just has that star power, like an it factor, like.
But he has that along with a sense that he enjoys all of these moments because they were not guaranteed. In the way that motivation. Other guys almost, it's not even motivation. It's like he relishes it because, like, he did this versus the guys who were, like, kind of like it was expected.
He's turned it into bulletin board material, right? Like, he's one of those guys. Like, I know everyone who was drafted before me. I'm like, cool.
Yes, like eternal chip on the shoulder guy.
Right. Tyler Hero also claimed that. Is that just Miami culture? Bam Adebayo has also claimed that.
White hot culture?
Yeah.
I think that, well, all the, you know, as a woman, I like the pink and the blue. I've always liked, you know, I'm a sucker for anything Miami.
Those
like,
colors are nice.
Yeah, and that's, like, literally when I think about, like, what drew me into the NBA. It's, like, you know, it's not because I understand, you know, the game so much as, well, no, it's stuff like that. And Miami Heat is the epitome of what I like about the NBA.
Wow.
You're into the culture of the NBA. And when you were on Cookies last time, at this point, I don't know, a year ago, who even knows?
Who knows?
Time goes by fast. It was like a year ago. At that point, you know, you talked a lot about the gossip, the message boards that talked and chatted about NBA players. Now, with the bubble coming into play, has that been integrated into the gossip that you're seeing about these players? Is that
Yes.
part of it, or is it changed? I just want to know how the bubble and Corona have
Well,
affected.
of course, it was
like, the
quite
virus, or-
limited.
yes.
But apparently right now it's about to be I think I learned this on Joe Budden podcast. Like Mal on the Joe Budden podcast is like, now is the summer, now is like the party. It's like when all the girls are going to be partying, but that's not really good gossip. The only gossip that I've heard from inside the bubble that's interesting, I heard that the photographer, Cassie Athena, the NBA photographer who was in the bubble, was hooking up with Bam Adebayo. I think that's been out there. I've heard. There was. From in the bubble, it's not that interesting. Except, sorry.
Only stuff you're comfortable with. Kat, we know you.
Yeah, I'm
have
trying
all
not
the
to be
gossip.
negative.
Yeah,
But listen, Jason Tatum is in Miami right now. He's partying. This chick from Memphis had sex with him on Sunday. And then the next
What?
morning, he went to Michael Jordan's golf club and played golf.
And the BMM is silent. It is deafening silence.
The BNM is trying to push this thing in the message boards that the Celtics are classier about their hookups, that they date the classy girls,
Wow.
and that they're low key and that like they're very private. So people are trying to always say that about the Celtics. Like,
Dude, leprechauns are people too. They have all the highs and lows of everybody else.
Wow, I just keep reading these posts about how Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward are gentlemen with like enormous penises. And
Oh, yeah.
they treat every woman
the
so
penis talk
nicely.
is so crazy because it all has to be exaggerated. Like, Ben Simmons gets the best of it. Like, I've seen it basically turn into something with the Ben Simmons myth that is like, I don't see how it's physically possible for women to be with it. People are like, I don't even want to go into it. But people are like, look at your forearm. And like, they're saying that he's like 4 inches wide. I'm like, what the? It's crazy. It must just be.
Well, we had a lot
And then
of
Lonzo,
penis talk
too.
when Jason Williams came on the show many years ago, and he talked
I've
for about
listened to
10
that.
minutes about Manute Bol's penis and it being,
My God.
by his description, I don't know, like several feet long and crashed through the windshields of cabs. I forget the exact lore that surrounded.
Played hockey for charity.
Exactly. I forget all of the tall tales, for lack of a better expression, about Manute's member.
In a much more family-friendly gossip, did you guys see the picture of Giannis's new baby? Of the top, he was on vacation. He's so cute. It is more exciting when an NBA player has a boy. I'm not gonna lie, because then you're like, oh, there's the new player.
Is he still blurring the face of his baby?
No, this is on his. First of all, if you want to see the babies, like I do, and the dog, you have to follow the girlfriends and the wives. And so I sort of don't follow the players anymore because their accounts are so boring, like for Instagram. But like if you want to see Russell Westbrook's, like Nina Westbrook's Instagram is amazing. Like, and it's like the two baby twin girls and then the little boy, and they all dress up as like construction workers for Halloween. It's so cute. But Giannis's baby is so cute. He's so chunky. His arm is like
Nice.
like it's like 10 fat ripple. Like, oh my God, he's beefy. And he's
like
just
like how many
delightful.
Ben Simmons penises wide?
Yeah, it's like so bad.
One.
Liv Simmons. I love Liv Simmons, of course, Ben's sister, and she's pregnant
good.
with a boy.
That's right.
So that's exciting, since that family is so cool. And then Joel just had his baby, a boy.
I did not know Joel had Joel Jr.
Yeah, he's real small as a baby. From what I
So
know.
have you ever gotten into like the Finsta world of NBA players?
What's Finsta again?
Like the non-public Instagram accounts. Their public one would be all super family friendly, the stuff that would say, I'm in the gym, rise and grind, big face coffee. And then the Finsta would be the one that they share like with other NBA players or with their friends or with women. So
well, that's when I
separating the
go,
two.
I do that by going after the women in a weird way. Like, I find weird references to the women that they're involved with. And a lot of those people, like, you know, if you want to see, like, Bradley Beal's real life, like, his wife or girlfriend that account is very much, you know, it's like in their garage and the kids are, like, on his lap and he's, like, fake driving with them. So I do a lot of that. I mean, it's pretty pure, though, but it's different than, like, Ayesha Curry, which is, like, so out there, you know.
Who has the most interesting extracurricular in any way life? Like, does someone have a cool second family in Atlanta, or does someone have a cool hobby somewhere else? Is someone a secret R&B singer? What do we not know about these guys?
Well, I mean, you guys do know about Kevin Love's Vishla and the girlfriend. Like, I mean, that's interesting. Like, it's too much. It's too beautiful. Like, this dog that Kevin Love has.
Yeah.
And he's so handsome, and the girlfriend is obviously the freaking model, and like the two of them are just like enchanted with the beauty of this dog. And then the girlfriend, I think, is like too. I worry about her because she's so obsessed with the dog that like, I'm like, when something happens to that dog, it's just gonna like destroy. You know, like they're always like touching faces and they just stare at each other. I don't know. That's what I get like locked into this dog's Instagram account, and then they have like drones following. I don't know. I love this dog. But that's very white, rich, fancy.
Yeah, at this point, what is Kevin Love even doing? Still playing the NBA?
What are any of the Cavs doing?
You have a beautiful wife. You have a beautiful dog. You have drones to follow, I guess, either one of them around.
Yeah. The drone takes off, then they go in the pool. The dog is like a life vest on. It's crazy.
And you're like, all right, cool. Time to go work and screw around on the court with, you know, whatever prom king the Cavs bring in the draft. Like, you're an adult. Why are you on the Cleveland Cavaliers? Go home to your wife and dog.
He's going to be on the Sixers soon, Ben. Just wait.
So, I know, because you told me, that you have your own Patreon, much like the Cookies Hoops Patreon, and it's going to be on the way, and you're going to be talking about...
No, it's not talking.
It's not talking?
I'm not doing Substack. I'm a writer. I'm writing.
Okay, I didn't
know
everything.
Something weird.
Tell us about it.
I'm following the podcast model. It's actually been quite helpful for me to follow people like you guys on Patreon and see how it goes. It's going to be a column. I'm going to be one of the weird writers working with the very limited. I just can't, like, the writers are supposed to do Substack, right? Which is like this. I just couldn't do a newsletter to someone's like, you can't mess with the fonts on Substack. I don't like it. I'm doing the Patreon thing. I'm very visual, but it's going to be very travel heavy. So even if you're a guy, like, it's called Beauty Shambles, which is, of course, a nod to my past as a beauty editor. I have several. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kat.
And everyone check out my social media for my updates on my Patreon, because I need to get an apartment and not live in Airbnb anymore because I'm going insane.
Yes, you do.
Shout out to that.
Thank
for
you.
Sure.
So thanks for coming by, Kat Marnell, New York Times bestselling writer and
Friend of the
beating
pod.
pulse of downtown New York City. In other news, however, your man's, Daryl Morey, announced that he was going to be stepping down from his role as the general manager of the Houston Rockets. He had that title for a decade. They had the second most wins in the NBA under his tenure. And he really does represent kind of a new breed of general manager, or at least a specific type of general manager in baseball.
Basketball. Oh, baseball. You're talking about money, no sin bin?
Well, I guess what I was trying to get to, I said awkwardly, was that these guys existed in baseball prior to Morey, but he was the first one to really bring analytics and metrics to the forefront in the sport of basketball. I did not set that up in a very understandable way, but that was kind of where I was going.
Yeah.
You know, my main takeaway from this news is that I will be fucking bummed if Daryl Morey does not get a new job in the NBA. The Rockets were consistently interesting. They were not only at the vanguard of basketball thought and philosophy, Daryl Morey had the balls to try stuff. He didn't just think about theory, he enacted it. And he put his team's season at stake by embracing ideas. And whether or not you agree with his ideas or whether or not those decisions were wise, ultimately you have to respect that.
I love him so much, and we've sung his praises before, but everyone knows he's a big Broadway fan. He even wrote a musical, I believe, about analytics and basketball. Hilarious, right? But it's relevant here in what you're saying because he, I think, has an awareness of entertainment and the spectacle. And I don't know if he sits down and says he's going to do something different on purpose. I think he maybe in the corner of his mind understands what the NBA is in a worldview and says, I'm going to give fans something really interesting to munch on and talk about, and this team is going to be good because I'm going to do this well. And he did that year after year, and his sense of drama was so awesome, and the theater of basketball was so awesome that you're right. I'm going to miss him if he doesn't latch on to another team. And I think he has every right to take a break because he's been at this for so long, of course. But I really hope he steps into another role right away.
To me, one of the guiding principles of Moreyism was that talent will ultimately prevail. And if you don't have the most talented team, then you have to do something different. By saying we're going to mimic the Golden State Warriors, who have Curry, Clay, Durant, Draymond Green, Iguodala, whoever, is a fool's errand because they have more talent. They will be better doing what Golden State does than we will be at doing what Golden State does because they are Golden State. And this is obviously a very obvious principle, but most teams don't abide by it. Most teams still try to do what the best teams try to do with worse personnel and accept the results. Daryl Morey didn't do that. Daryl Morey was willing to totally switch things up and try to win doing something differently. And he almost succeeded. If Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, there's a very good chance that the Rockets, with Harden and Chris Paul, knock off the Golden State Warriors, who were the best team in NBA history. They were the best team. They had the most talent. There was no way they were going to lose unless Daryl Morey could figure out a way to do it with personnel. And he came damn close.
Mm-hmm. And I view him in my mind as the best GM until he stepped down in the NBA. And, when I heard that news, I asked myself, why? Show me the proof, because the first thing Grill Master would say is, show me the championships. He loses in the playoffs every year. How could he be the best team constructor or team manager? And understanding, personally in my life, understanding how probability works is still an ongoing thing with me, and understanding that losing is a byproduct of a thing, as is winning, is really confusing. And that thing may be the NBA or whatever. He was right there, and he could have won the bubble. Instead, the Sixers won the bubble, but he was right there with it, and he flamed out. You can pick out specific moments in where the Rockets kind of famously flamed out. But he put his team in the position to succeed better than any other manager in the NBA.
If you look at the Rockets' options, I think his choices make a lot of sense. And there are certainly people who would say, yes, but why don't you just go out there and lose with James Harden, Clint Capella, Trevor Ariza, and just go out there and lose with these guys that you've been losing with. Just go do that. And he always tried to flip it up. He always tried something different. And, I don't think the Westbrook for Chris Paul trade was a good one from a value standpoint, but also his hands may have been tied. As someone who worked for your guy, the Frittata man.
It's like an egg casserole on in a plate, right? It's like a deep dish kind of what do you call that French delicacy? That's an egg pie
I'm not totally sure.
with a crust. Come on, you know this anyway. That's who he worked for, basically.
The frittata.
Big 90s aughts food energy right there.
Yeah, the frittata just... You'll make one every now and then, and you're like,
Frittata non grata.
is this just a quiche?
That's what I was looking for. Is it the French delicacy quiche? I've never enjoyed a frittata in my life, and I'm not sure Daryl Morey enjoyed his frittata.
I've made a couple asparagus frittatas, and I gotta say, they were all right. They weren't really better than an omelet. There was no real... I mean, then you're supposed to put them under the broiler to brown the top. It just seems like a lot of work for eggs.
When you overcook an egg that way, it gets kind of foamy, and it's really hard to avoid that. You got to like lop a ton of cheese in there. In theory, I think it could be delicious. I've never had a delicious bite of a frittata.
Daryl Morey, like you, had enough of the frittatas.
Enough.
But going back to what we were saying before about frittatas,
Go on.
was that he was first to market, so to speak, in the tech disruptor way, with ideas that were put into principle on a very visible platform. He came from the Boston organization. He's a member of the BMM. And these ideas were circulating around the message boards that he was on, that all those same people were on. So people were talking about these, and they may have been underlying, I guess, tremors in the way that a team like Boston or a team like San Antonio was making their decisions. But it was nowhere as prominent as Daryl Morey's hiring with the Rockets. And when I've spoken with guys who are from the analytics community, there's this idea that former players and jocks and guys who kind of came up through the NBA are the club. I don't mean this in the greenhouse sitting on the back of tables with like a bottle of 42 Below. I'm talking about like they are a social club. They're a group. They're a coven, a cabal.
Like the skulls.
Exactly.
Right.
These are people, especially former players, who have played this game at its highest level, and there's a kinship that comes with doing that and a protectivism that also accompanies being the best on the planet at a sport.
I believe it.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
But someone like Daryl Morey is not from the club.
No.
And there was always going to be venom spat in his direction by people like Charles Barkley, because Charles Barkley is a foremost protector of the club. He embodies the club, for better or worse. And Morey embodies not being in the club. Like David Griffin, GM of the Pelicans, not from the club. He's another analytics guy. He's smart. Sam Hinkie, not from the club. And that's why you hear these phrases that came out of the Sixers organization from the people who were in the club talking about him. He's not a basketball guy, because that's what it means. So Daryl Morey not only brought these ideas to the forefront, he was really one of those guys that was not in the club. And I think that's what engendered a lot of the criticism and a lot of the anger from people that even trickled down to fans who were resistant to analytics, is that Daryl Morey was a real outsider.
Who became an ultimate insider within his tenure as the GM of the Rockets. Because you're right, when he comes in, you're coming off of the fumes of no sin bin, like baseball analytics, the Boston Red Sox, Billy Beane, who is an insider. And then I think there was a lag effect a little bit with the NBA and the things that baseball were going through, and the way the game was changing and the way value was changing. But in the course of Daryl Morey's tenure, up until a few days ago, his effect is you can register his effect pretty easily. I think every team outside of the Knicks and the Lakers abides by a lot of the principles that Morey kind of introduced to the league, and a lot of those principles just make sense. Like they're almost arithmetic in their structure. There's no abstraction going on, and and Mori's success, or the perception of Mori, is kind of based off of his success or his failure. But I view his success as something that was more influential as a thought process.
I'm certainly going to be forgetting names, but I do think we'll look at Daryl Morey and say the coaching tree, so to speak, or the GMing tree to Morey will be very, very important. You know, not only Sam Hinkie, who created the team in 2.5 years and was arguably the best GM in history.
Got 2 top 15 players.
Like, arguably.
Yep.
2.5 years, 2 top 15 players, Covington. I mean, a stack of assets. Like, his performance speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. But you also have Rosas in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You have Monty McNair, who was hired by the Kings this offseason. Mm-hmm. And then you have Raphael Stone, who is his heir apparent in Houston. I know I'm forgetting guys, but that right there is, you know, that's 3-4 guys who came from Houston that are now running other NBA teams.
Absolutely. And you know, this is not a eulogy. Morey's going to have his best years moving forward, but
I don't know.
Yeah, this is very hard to tell, but he's young. I think his principles are more accepted now than ever. There's some teams that will be kryptonite towards him, like New York and Los Angeles, but there's other teams that have nothing to lose by hiring one of the most successful coaches in the last decade. I mean, the Rockets have made the playoffs 8 years in a row and finished first in their weird division, like over half that time.
I'm not convinced that Morey's looking for a different NBA job. That doesn't really make sense to me. Mm-hmm. He's done this for a decade. He took an unbelievable amount of heat because of
gracefully too.
Silently. You know, he apologized and kept it moving.
Yeah.
But he made comments that were supportive of the protests in Hong Kong, which enraged China, who in turn used the NBA as an example of an international corporation who was benefiting from the size and power of the Chinese marketplace, but was not showing proper fealty and loyalty to the Chinese government. Mm-hmm. And the NBA was unfortunate enough to be made an example of. You know, I don't think that the Chinese government gave a fuck about Daryl Morey. I don't think they gave a fuck about anything he said. It was like, no, you are in America. You do business with us. Get in line. And I'm not relitigating or navigating any of that. I'm mostly saying that Daryl Morey had to deal with a lot of fallout from a tweet.
Which is his choice, and he knew that was coming because that was.
There's no way he knew that was coming. No way.
What do you mean? That's a very hot button topic for the NBA.
Come on, man. There is no way he saw that blowback coming. No way.
I think everybody in those few months when people cared about Hong Kong before they moved on, that was very intense. And I think anyone, like, that was one of those odd silence is complicity moments where people were like, what's your stance on Hong Kong? And I think it was really, really spicy because Hong Kong was going through such upheaval. So when he said it, to me, he had Yao Ming. He had Jeremy Lin. He redesigned, in his tenure, they redesigned the Rockets logo to appeal to China because it looks like Chinese characters. It's red. He knows everything. I think he was prepared for it.
I could not disagree more, but who knows? I think he understood the dynamics. I think, as you said, the Rockets benefited from that relationship in a way that few other teams have. I just do not believe he saw the fallout coming or he wouldn't have done it.
I mean, I think he expected a fallout, and I think he expected Silver to side with him, which Silver did. I don't know if he expected China.
I mean, Silver didn't really sign with him. He didn't Morey apologize? Yeah,
but the NBA said they respect Daryl Morey's opinion and will take any sanctions from China. And China took them off, the NBA off air, and Silver was like, we'll accept those terms. He stood by his guy, but who knows why someone steps down in this moment after that, right? Like, we'll never know.
Of course. I'm mostly saying that was a harrowing year between the China controversy, the bubble, him
Losing in
dealing
the bubble.
with the Frittata man, who does not seem to be a great owner, who does not seem to be someone that he would necessarily see eye to eye with. I don't know what their working relationship was like.
To be clear, they say publicly that they get along great. The Frittata man has said publicly today that he loves Daryl Morey and will seek his counsel in the future, so it's all good. On record.
I mean, yeah, all Maury did was post a thing that said "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong," and it was like an image. I mean, he didn't even say anything.
We like Daryl Morey, man. I'm kind of with him. I'm pro Hong Kong, if that's a shocker.
Yeah, no, I just mean it was him kind of reposting an image. Like, I just don't think he anticipated this level of fallout. But we'll never know unless we ask him.
And he won't even tell us. Right? Like,
So where do you think, if he does decide to come back to the NBA, and this isn't just him saying legitimately, I just want to escape this league and the scrutiny and the calendar and go do something else for a while. But say he does want to come back to the NBA, and you know where I'm going with this. What makes sense for him? Where does Daryl Morey leave that's better than Houston, who with James Harden has a chance to win a title every year?
Like, what kind of challenges does a man want or a person want in their lives? Does Daryl Morey look at the 2019 landscape and say, I want to build something from the ground up? Or does he say, oh, this team just needs a little bit of lipstick on the pig or the stat hog or some icing on the cake? Like, I don't know what motivates anybody, but I could see both, right? I could see him saying, I'm going to go to a team that is rebuilding and there's a few draft picks, I'm there. Or he could say, Philadelphia has 2 top 15 players. All they need is a little matching, and we could win a chip in a year. I would hope he would go to Philly because I think that would be the most fun. But we are also very Philly-centric up in here.
I find the idea of him going to a rebuild situation at this moment very implausible. Only because he's been like chasing the dragon, trying to win a title, coming up short, and to kind of fold your cards with the Rockets and say, you know what, I'm going to restart over in Charlotte. Like, why? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just stay in Houston and do the same thing? Why would you start over?
Well,
Like, that strikes me as like deeply out of character for someone who's as competitive as he is.
But
when
that's-
everyone else said, I don't want to go after the Warriors, he said, I'm going to try.
But this is the competitive nature of him. We'll never know what motivates a person. We'll never know what motivates us, but like ourselves. But his competitive nature would say, in my opinion, I don't want to be gifted Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I could do this in 3 years in Charlotte. Like, I'm going to build this like I built.
But I mean, he
the
could just
Rockets.
do that in Houston. That's what I'm saying. He
I
could
mean,
just say,
You hang out
okay,
with a
cool.
frittata.
I'm right. I mean, the ownership thing is an issue, but I'm just suggesting that he could say, okay, cool. I'm going to trade off Harden. I'm going to trade off Westbrook. You know, attach assets, move them both together, however you want to do it. I'm going to get rid of these guys and start from scratch. Why not do it in Houston if he's interested in a deep cleansing, you know, rebuild that would resemble what you'd have to do in a place like Charlotte?
I mean, I think he's fulfilled his promise to the Houston Rockets fan base and organization. Maybe he's motivated to be closer to Broadway, man, and maybe he wants to be an enforcer, a front office enforcer for a one-team league in relegation. But I think that's why I say I don't know what motivates a person in their life. I think he is, he's been there a long time. So I bet you he's been thinking about leaving for 5 years.
You're probably right. I would guess that a place like the Knicks, for example, not that they are
Nice.
interested
Let's do
in
this.
hiring him, but a place like the Knicks would hold more appeal than, say, Charlotte in that way, right? We're talking about, they have more money, better lifestyle. I mean, in a world where there's not COVID,
Yeah.
but closer to Broadway. Like there are perks that exist in New York that don't exist in Houston. Him saying, I'm going to go to DC and work with Bradley Beal. I feel like Houston is a big city. It's a big market. It's attractive. He's drawn big free agents there before. If he wanted to just, pull the plug and start it over, I feel like the Knicks would present a reasonable argument for that. The problem with him joining a contender, though, is if you look at the top teams in the league, they all have front offices that are, because of their success,
that got them there.
That are well respected. Mm-hmm. If you're the Nets, you could make an argument internally that Daryl Morey would be a better GM than Sean Marks. You could make that argument, but why would you? But why would you bother?
Yeah, I think Joseph Tsai's happy with Sean Marks.
Of course. You're like, these are the guys that you've brought here. Here are the free agents you've recruited. This is everything you've built. Technically, maybe Morey's a little better than you, but we're good. Mm-hmm. He's not worth the trouble to potentially upgrade from someone like Sean Marks. And I think you could say that with almost any successful team. They're pretty happy with who they have.
Do you, in your opinion, do you think the NBA front office community views Morey like we do? Do you think a team, let's say the Knicks, just re-sign Perry for a 1-year extension, so it's not, they can bring Morey in. Do you think Dolan says, "Oh wow, this guy is available, we got to consider this," or do they think this guy doesn't even believe in centers? What is the feel?
Well, I think we've seen a diminishing number of dumb franchises, especially over the last 5 years.
Agreed.
There's so few teams who are outlier dumb that I don't even know who that would be right now. Maybe the Knicks, because if there's sort of an ownership ethos that would inform those kind of decisions, but I don't even know. I don't know enough about this new group with the Knicks to know what they understand and what their outlook is, and if that can actually deviate from Dolan wanting to be taken seriously when he sits in the Garden, doesn't want people to sell the team, and wants Knicks to bounce a ball off someone's face every now and then.
I fell into my own trap.
Who knows?
Because the Knicks have not behaved in a dumb way for years. It's hard to tell because the effects of someone like Morey or Hinkie have reached a popular mind state that it's hard to identify that we adopt the principles of math or the way these guys rebuild, because all these teams are doing it now.
Right. There's certainly a group of fans who would say, Morey's a nerd. What did they ever win? He blew up the team. I've seen them in the comments. They're there.
Barkley.
Exactly. There are people who line up with that. But most NBA franchises at this point do not.
Right.
They are either built in his image or at least have accepted those
tenets of it.
Tenets as part of the process of building. Mm-hmm. Which brings us, of course, to the Sixers. Because the Sixers
that was
don't
beautiful.
have...
Wait, pause. That was a beautiful segue. Go off, King.
Because the Sixers do not. The Sixers have no apparent philosophy. They have no one with any experience, and they have no front office. So if you were a Sixers fan, the availability of Morey looks like the magic bullet. The clouds have parted, and here comes Daryl, Saint Daryl, descending from the heavens in a ray of golden light to fix all of the fucked up problems that the organization has. Because otherwise you're just talking about doing some dipshit trade for Buddy Hield. You're like, okay, we got to solve this. Everything is in shambles. Trade for Buddy Hield. That's
Horford
it.
for Hield. Yeah,
Horford for Hield. That's it. That's the solution to our problems. It's Horford for Hield. Make it happen.
That. Don't do that.
That's the sucker's move.
Don't do it.
That's the sucker's trade. It's a sucker's trade.
Yeah.
It's so there. Just it's a trap.
It is a trap for sure. And
you're going to be dealing with one of Morey's guys when you make that deal. You're going to be having Elton negotiating, or whoever negotiating with one of Morey's guys who is going to take you to the cleaners.
Zaire Smith and a conditional first rounder as sweeteners. But you're right, and the dumb fan bases, and I'm in there, always expect a silver bullet. And we saw the Lakers. I mean, a golden gun, right? The Lakers won that way. They are proof that this works. They do dumb things for years. They get the guy, they win. This is the guy for the Sixers. I hate to agree with a fan base that I am, but I don't relate to. Getting Morey will get you a championship, I think.
No, I have no doubt about it. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
The only thing that the Sixers can do to fuck this up is have other people run the show who are unqualified. And seemingly the only person that they value, according to the rumor mill, is Morey. They have made overtures to him multiple times, allegedly. Whether I believe that or not, different question. But they've allegedly twice tried to reach out to hire Daryl Morey. Now, there are some stumbling blocks here.
Yeah.
Particularly their mistreatment of Sam Hinkie, who is one of Morey's best friends and his mentee. And the same people who mistreated Hinkie remain in the Sixers organization. There is no real reason for Morey to go and work for Philly to help them succeed at all. Like, fuck off.
And also,
you treated my mans like trash. All you guys are still there, and like, why would I come in and save your ass? Why would I do that?
Also, those people are NBA heads, and I think the NBA as a organization, company, is not very excited about Daryl Morey because we've seen the economic impacts of his stance on Hong Kong and China, and the people running the show in Philly are company men. So there's that stumbling block too.
Also a valid point. On the other hand, I would also say, though, that because of the lack of landing spots for someone of Daryl Morey's ilk as a highly qualified candidate, perhaps the best in the business, in going to a place where he can immediately contend for a title, and there is not an existing front office, Philadelphia is uniquely situated. Elton Brand is an absolute no one. He has never made a decision that we know of. He is allegedly empowered, but no one knows what that means.
He put the ravioli on the slice.
Maybe. I don't know.
He stuffed the fettuccine in the bun.
I doubt it.
Prove it.
I don't think Elton Brand does anything. So even now, when now he's actually making the decisions, I'm like, sure, is he? Why would that be the case? Who says the meat shield is now our main decision maker? Who does that? So I don't even believe that he's not just a rebeefed meat shield. He's the Impossible Burger now.
To counterpoint that, I think they're very happy with the meat shield. And if you're an ownership board directed by Josh Harris, you want the Elton Brands of GMs. To say Daryl Morey exists in the periphery now that you can pluck into that position would be kind of like a question of like the chicken or the egg. Like, what does this board want? They want a meat shield. They don't want a free thinker who might do something radical.
I don't know. Because if you look at this organization and you say they took this over about a decade ago, they've made a lot of decisions and they've all been awful. Every decision Philadelphia makes is awful.
Except to stand for them, doing nothing is a decision.
No,
we're not.
No. Everything they've done is awful.
But they haven't traded away these two guys.
That's not a they. We're talking about the ownership. Ownership isn't a they.
But then you're saying...
Hold on.
Okay.
Because what I'm saying here is ownership decisions. Ownership. They were the ones who kept Doug Collins and Tom what's his name? Is it Tom DeLeo? Whatever his name is, around. They were the ones who okayed the Bynum deal. It took that debacle for them to hire Sam Hinkie, who then made them a competent organization for 2.5 years. And then they screwed up again and let Jerry in and let Brian in and let the NBA in. And that fucked up the organization worse than before. And look, Hinkie's handiwork, they're still over there feasting from that garden of earthly delights, despite having pulled all the crops out by the roots and having salted that formerly fertile soil. But everything they do is dumb. The Doc Rivers decision, unless it is tied to something larger, like bringing in Daryl Morey, will end up being dumb. Because they are dumb. They do dumb things. Sam Hinkie was an anomaly. So where I'm going with this is that the only example we've had of them doing something smart was hiring someone good and getting out of the way for a little while. So that's why I'm holding out a sliver of hope that can easily be crushed, is that they have actually hired the right guy one time before.
Well, I also give respects to them because when all this chatter about Ben Simmons being a coward and not shooting and being a flawed number one, they immediately re-upped him to the max and were like, we're not moving him. He's great. And I think that there's a skill involved there that my certain team in relegation doesn't do. They are not budging on Joel. And those are important things because that holds the possibility of a championship intact. And it sounds easier than it is because you could trade Joel for parts right now, and it would be the dumbest thing the Sixers have done.
But now we're talking about front office decisions versus ownership. Like the ownership saying, let's trade Ben Simmons, go do it. That's kind of different, right?
But you're dodging who has responsibility. If you're saying Elton Brand doesn't do anything, and then you're saying ownership, it doesn't do anything, then who's doing what?
What I mean is, I don't think you can say the Sixers get credit for not trading Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid because there was no reason to trade either of them. It never made any sense. So, like, to say at least they haven't done that, but they've fucked up everything else, to me strikes...
But sense is a very abstract thought here, right? Because you can make sense of any action at any time. It doesn't make sense to us because we love these players, but it makes sense to a ton of people.
But they've screwed up everything, is what I'm saying. They brought terrible people into the organization. They refused to hire a GM. They didn't bring back Jimmy Butler. They signed Tobias Harris. Like, everything they do is dumb from an organizational standpoint. To say at least they didn't trade Joel or Ben, well, sure, that's true.
I love that Zaire trade, though.
But that was Brett Brown. That's what I mean. Like,
but who is so maybe I'm having trouble with identifying who they
I'm
is
not
to you.
talking about individual transactions. I'm talking about big picture moves that come from ownership.
But they're the process. They're the ones that committed to the process for 2.5 years that most of the teams wouldn't.
Well, that's certainly not true.
I mean, what? Okay, let's say
most other teams wouldn't commit to a 2-year rebuild. Every team would do that.
Some teams would do that, and some teams have done that well. But you have to credit them for hiring and then sticking with Hinkie's plan, right? Because they were ridiculed throughout that whole 2.5 years.
Yeah, and then they brought in the NBA and fired him.
Right, but you can't say like they have done nothing right when you're here because they had done something right.
I literally said when I started talking about the Sixers that they had made one good decision out of all of these decisions they've made over the past 10, 11 years, and the only good decision they made was hiring Sam Hinkie. And the point from that was that, which is why I have a sliver of hope that they will hire the one right guy again. That was my entire point, was that every mistake they've made repeatedly over and over and over, at every different end, the one thing they did right was hire Sam Hinkie. So maybe they could hire the right guy one more time.
So when this went down yesterday, it got me thinking, and we're talking about Daryl Morey and his availability and what he's done with the Rockets, and we're screaming about Josh Harris, and it got me thinking that I wonder if sports fans are really into The Secret or the idea of magical thinking. I wish there was a better way to say magical thinking because it sounds hippy dippy. Joan Didion, shout out to that awesome book, but all we do as sports fans is magical think, right? And we project our desires, which take the form of criticism and hope and all that stuff, onto every single thing that happens. Daryl Morey steps down from the Rockets. There's a lot to talk about there. And then immediately putting him in a situation where we criticize the Sixers is fascinating to me, right? Because I've done that with the Knicks so long before I realized it was futile. And I don't think the Sixers are futile here. I think they have an opportunity to win it all in the next 5 years. But it's hard, and we were talking about who orbits what sun? Who is the sun and what orbits it, right? Is the Sixers the sun? Is Morey the sun? Are we the sun? Or are we a satellite? I don't know. You can keep on switching all those things. But I think every fan base who is upset with their front office is asking for Morey right now, right?
I'm sure. I mean, there are a population of fans, as mentioned, who are Morey skeptics despite evidence to the contrary. But I would assume that any fan base who is dissatisfied with how the organization is run would be clamoring for him. That said, most of the ones who have had poorly run teams have switched power over the last few years.
I know. Yeah. There's new tenures all over the league. So it's hard to find a spot that would be like HR friendly.
Right. It's not like Kings fans are saying, bring us Morey. They just hired somebody.
Yeah.
They
hired
might
someone
like
good.
Morey more than his understudy, but they hired the understudy. Like they're fine with that. The Chicago Bulls, they might love Morey, but they hired your boy from the Nuggets. So
And the Wizards have someone new. And right, there's a tough fit here for. This is assuming Morey wants to continue working next year. I think he would be awesome on TV, but and he strikes me as someone who has many interests. The Sloan Conference, for one, he could just like concentrate on that. I don't know. I would love to see him in Philly. I think that is the place I went to first as well, because I feel like Philly is one of those teams that are on the cusp with an unstable front office. It's a frittata that is over and undercooked at the same time.
I mean, but that's why looking at the Sixers and saying they do everything wrong, maybe this is the one thing they can do right, is both appealing and depressing. Because 90% of the time they're going to get this wrong. They get everything wrong. You're looking at what's happened in the front office over the past week or so. Two of the guys who have left are hinky dudes. And
But that
Brett
makes
Brown
sense.
was fired.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Brett Brown's exit meant that guys who he may have had longer term personal relationships with seemingly feel like they are now cut loose and untethered from the organization as well. But you're looking at this, well, on one hand saying, maybe Morey can come in and solve all this. That'll do it. And then you're looking and saying, oh, it's all the cretins who have screwed up the team for the last 4 years, consolidating even more power. That when people were cheering the dismissal of Brett Brown, who got more powerful from that? He was a big voice in that franchise. He was respected around the league. He's gone. Who got more powerful because of that? When Mark Eversley left, who was one of Colangelo's guys and got hired by the Bulls, who got more powerful because of that? And now we see one of the main guys who was under on the scouting department, who was a hanky guy. He went. He left to go join the Sacramento Kings. The guy who left yesterday went to become a coach with the Utah Jazz. These are smart organizations hiring these guys, or at least poaching them from the Sixers to some degree. And all that's left in Philly is this barren wasteland. There's no one qualified. There's no one smart. There's no one with any track record of excellence. There's no one left from Hinkie, as far as I can tell, who has a position of power. Like, you're looking at a dead planet. It's almost scandalous.
But
how little talent is in the Sixers front office. Meanwhile, we're over here like, Daryl Morey. Maybe it's Morey. Maybe Morey will do this. It's really...
But this is what I mean.
There's evidence that Daryl Morey is the last person they would hire.
That was my point a few minutes ago. Right. Being Elton Brand is the guy they want. But this is also my point about magical thinking, right? Pelinka did everything wrong in LA. They want an asterisk chip. I can't wait till it was announced yesterday that Anthony Davis is going to opt out and re-sign and try to win his first real chip. Start that journey in the NBA next year. But I think this is where I was going with magical thinking, right? Because any of these scenarios or explanations is valid. All it takes is for the Sixers to win, to wash that all away, and the Sixers could do that. Anybody anything could happen at that point. The probability of those things are on a spectrum. But the probability is, you're saying there's a chance. And this is what I mean by magical thinking. All these things that you're saying have various degrees of truth to them. If it comes down to it, you still have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So this won't die until they're out of here. Like, this is just, it becomes an exercise, right?
Well, to me, I think there's a very reasonable chance that Joel and Ben stay healthy, and they are still improving, being that they're young guys. A few cosmetic changes to the roster, which bring in more guards, more wings who actually like shooting the basketball. And all of a sudden, this team wins 60 games. And to your point, that perfume of success will erase the stench of disappointment and incompetence from the front office. And it won't really have much to do with them doing anything correct.
Right.
It's like, oh, they're both healthy. Oh, we added a couple obvious guys who are mediocre. We added 3 more James Ennises, and all of a sudden we're a 60-win team. Wow, look at that. Mm-hmm. And there is an easy out for the Sixers franchise in that way. Mm-hmm. And that's the Rob Pelinka thing. The Lakers bungled everything. But ultimately, now people say, well, shouldn't he be executive of the year? Right. I mean, they won a championship. They added Anthony Davis. What's who else you want? You're going to give it to someone who didn't even make the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this on the last pod. Even if you take it to Heat culture, it's like, oh, Riley's been so good at this. I'm like, Riley was kind of the laughingstock when LeBron walked away from him. They called him outdated. Whatever. Some people said the game had passed him by and he doesn't connect with, players anymore. And then he gets to the finals with Tyler Herro, and they're like, Riley's back, baby. I'm like, sure. All these things are true. All these things can be true at the same time.
Well, if Jimmy Butler doesn't end up going to Miami, which may not have happened if the Sixers had offered him a max contract, all of a sudden you're looking at a Miami team that might still have Hassan Whiteside. They might have never acquired Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala because those were, the kind of components you want to add to a contender, which they certainly were not. The Heat might be an 8th seed who loses in the first round, and the word Heat culture raises an eyebrow of quizzical bewilderment versus a nod about like how they're so badass, and Jimmy Butler somehow acquired that within days of arriving in Miami.
Yeah. And listening to so many podcasts that Daryl Morey has been on and reading what he says, he understands all of this. Every time he's dismissed from like the conference finals, people are on him about the radical moves he's made. And he's like, listen, I have James Harden. We just lost. That's okay. People lose games, and I love that about him. But I think that is very unacceptable for a type of fan.
I agree. That is not acceptable for fans of the Cookies Hoops podcast, though, because they expect perfection.
I thought we were pretty perfect.
And fortunately, they got it. So thank you to Kat Marnell. Remember, she's got a Patreon that's on the way out. It's going to be called Beauty Shambles. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Beauty Shambles.
And it's going to be a real
burner
lipstick safari.
I love it.
Cookies. Cookies.